Spasiba большое, Anna. Dobre утро. I will continue in English, I'm sorry for that. I'd like to start by thanking all of you for being here, and of course I'd like to thank very much the organizer, the City Foundation, and the Ministry of Finance for having me here. It's really an important topic, and a topic that is very core to my work, so I'm very pleased to be here and very honored to be the first speakers to provide a general overview of financial literacy worldwide. And in doing that, I'd like first to provide a kind of global framework on why we are doing financial education. I won't be too long because I'm quite sure that you're all aware of why we are doing it. Just trying to change my slides. Can you?
Where's the?
Just tell me where I should point it out. Okay, over there. Okay, fantastic. Okay, so 3 key points I would like to make. Indeed, the global context, the general framework for developing financial literacy. Second, what is the status of financial literacy, how to improve it, in particular through national strategy for financial education. Third, why are we all targeting on youth? Why is youth such an important target? Sergei Stolchak already outlined one of the main reasons. Youth needs financial literacy, but there are more to that. And then I'd like to finish by a few key recommendations on implementation issue, on the way forward ahead of us. So first, and of course I will be very short on this part, but I'd like to highlight that again, we are working on this issue, financial education, financial literacy, because the world is changing, because financial markets are evolving very fast, because new consumers are accessing financial products, and these new consumers are not necessarily very familiar with financial issues, with financial products. In addition to that, there is a great transfer of risk onto individuals because they live longer, because pension and welfare state are not as generous as they used to be. Second of all, we know that, of course, financial consumer protection and regulation are extremely useful, but they are not enough. Financial markets, financial innovation is always faster than regulation first. And second, even with appropriate disclosure requirement, consumers will still need to understand the information provided to them. They will still need to feel responsible for their own decision. And then we may think that this is all fine as long as financial consumers have the ability, the competencies to first understand the information and then to take action. But when we look at levels of financial literacy across the world, this is very low. As one of my friends and colleagues is saying, Anna Maria Lusardi, some of you may know her, the world is flat. Financial literacy levels are low in Russia, but they are low everywhere. They are low in my own country, France, they are low in the US, they are low in many, many countries, and I'll come back on this. And this situation, the fact that financial markets, financial systems are more complex, the fact that regulation and consumer protection won't be enough, and the fact that individuals have low level of financial literacy has negative spillover effect on all stakeholders involved. First on consumers and individuals, of course. They may be excluded from the financial system, they may be excluded from economic development, there will be mistrust in financial institutions, and in this way financial institutions are certainly missing market opportunity just because of a lack of confidence in financial system and financial institutions. And last but not least, of course, the government have also a cost to pay in the sense that they need to supervise the financial system even more, keeping in mind that consumers are not necessarily well equipped enough to make financial decisions. I just would like to come back again. No, I want the next slide. Sorry for that. So the world is getting more sophisticated, but okay, working now. I just wanted briefly to come back on this low level of financial literacy. And by financial literacy, I'm not only referring to financial knowledge, that is the knowledge of financial concept, but I'm also covering financial behavior and the financial outcome for consumers. So if we look at financial knowledge per se, in the first place, we see that there are 2 kinds of competency that are very, very limited. The first one is certainly the understanding of compound interest, and I'll provide you with figures across country in just a second. The second competency that is a major difficulty in many, many countries is the ability to understand risk diversification, which is really an important concept as well when investing in financial markets. And then an additional area that is really important to keep in mind is that quite often consumers tend to overestimate what they know. So if you ask them, are you financially knowledgeable, they will probably say yes, and this is the case for 3 in 4 US citizens. But then if you ask them very concrete financial knowledge question, it is very likely that they will fail the test. And actually, in the US, the test, a very basic test was run, and only 1 in 7 US citizens were able to understand and to respond to the very concrete basic financial knowledge question. If we now look briefly at behavior, we see that there are difficulties in 4 key areas. First, the use of formal services in many countries, and especially emerging ones. But in all developed countries, we also see difficulties around planning ahead. And of course, this is a major difficulty when we speak about retirement planning, for example, but also if you think of planning for education of kids. There's also an issue around the responsible use of credit. We know that the level of over-indebtedness of consumers is increasing in many countries. This is typically the case these days in Asia or Canada, for example, but also in the emerging world. Brazil, for example, is really concerned at the moment with emerging over-indebtedness of middle classes. So this is an issue. And the last area of behavior that is a difficulty in most countries is shopping around for the best financial opportunity and for the best product. Lastly, I want to highlight that there are a number of groups that are particularly at risk. And I don't want to go into details, but of course young adults are especially are not very well equipped, or at least their level of financial literacy is lower than that of adults. And this is an issue because, of course, we know that the financial landscape will get even more sophisticated. We know that this young individual will bear even more risk as they move in adulthood. So it's really, really important to target that group. Then I can mention elderly population, women, low-income, migrants, but I don't want to go into too many details. I wanted to show you a graph just focusing on one aspect of financial knowledge, that is the understanding of interest rate. And this graph is showing how many individuals in survey conducted in a range of countries are able to get a very simple interest rate question right. And by very simple, I'm meaning no calculation involved. We are not asking people to do the math. We are just trying to assess whether they understand the concept. And we see that it's not too bad. So in a number of countries, more than 50% of the population is kind of understanding the simple interest rate. But then if we move to a question that is also implying the understanding of compound interest, that is to say that they will, I'm trying to move, okay,